Sir, could you pretend to be my daddy, just for one day? Harold Blake had built walls his entire life around his empire, around his heart. But in a bustling New York market, a little girl's fragile voice cracked straight through all of it, and nothing was ever the same again. The sky over Manhattan was its usual patchwork of steel and silver, framed by high-rises that blotted out the morning sun. Harold Blake stepped into the tiny corner store with the same precision. He applied to everything, his suit, crisp, tie, flawless, movements calculated. He didn't make mistakes, not in business, not in life. He didn't allow room for chaos, but chaos, it seemed, had other plans. "Excuse me," he said, voice cool as glass. "I ordered still water, not sparkling." The young cashier, probably just out of college, judging by her trembling hands, checked the receipt, flustered. I'm sorry, sir. I thought you thought wrong," Harold interrupted. His tone wasn't raised. It never had to be. His mere presence did the shouting. With icy precision, he pushed the bottle back across the counter and adjusted the cuff of his navy suit jacket. Behind him, the line murmured. New Yorkers were not known for patience, and the low tide of collective annoyance began to rise. But Harold remained unmoved. He lived in a world of boardrooms, bottom lines, and billion-dollar deals where delays meant weakness, and weakness cost money. Then, piercing through the thick air of tension like a lightning bolt, "Sir, could you pretend to be my daddy, just for one day?" Harold froze. The words didn't register at first. They sounded too surreal, too innocent, too impossibly raw. He turned. There, just a few feet behind him, stood a little girl no older than 6. She had tangled golden curls and wore a faded pink hoodie 2 sizes too small. Her neon socks didn't match, and her tiny hands were clutching a lollipop that had long since melted onto the wrapper. But her eyes, those eyes were ocean blue and impossibly wide, gazing up at him not with fear, but hope. Real hope. Behind her, a woman came rushing forward, out of breath, face flushed. "Anna," she gasped, kneeling down to grip the child's shoulders. "Sweetheart, you can't run off like that." She looked up, mortified. Her coat was thin and frayed at the edges, her shoes scuffed, her braid half undone. There were dark circles beneath her eyes, and fatigue clung to her like a second skin. But even in her exhaustion, something about her struck Harold, something graceful, resilient. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly, pulling the girl on it back. She just says things sometimes." "I didn't mean." She asked me a question," Harold said quietly. The woman blinked, startled. Yes, but she doesn't understand." Harold lowered himself to one knee, something he hadn't done in years, and met the child's gaze. "Why me?" he asked. Anna tilted her head. "Because you look like the daddies in the movies," she said softly, "and mommy's always tired. I just wanted one day with someone who could hold my hand in front of everyone and say I was important." Silence. Deafening, dense silence. For the first time in years, Harold Blake had no words. The woman tried to explain again. "Look, sir, I'm really sorry. She's just a child. She doesn't." "What's your name?" he asked her. The woman paused. "Claire," she said hesitantly. "Claire Bennett." He stood, nodding once. "Miss Bennett, I'll walk. You both outside." She hesitated, but followed. Outside in the cold spring wind, Harold looked down at Anna. "You know, pretending to be someone's father is a serious thing," he said. "I know," Anna replied, "but I think you could do it, just for today." Claire sighed, embarrassed. She doesn't understand what she's saying. Her father left when she was 2. She barely remembers him. "I worked 2 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads." She doesn't mean to bother anyone. Harold looked at her closely. This woman who was doing everything right and still seemed one step away from falling apart. Her voice trembled, but not from weakness, from pressure, from carrying everything alone. He should have said goodbye. He should have walked away like he always did. But something buried and long forgotten, stirred in his chest. "Where are you 2 headed?" he asked. Claire looked surprised. The park on 56th. It's our pretend picnic day. Just some sandwiches and a blanket." "Would you mind," Harold said slowly, "if I joined you?" Later that afternoon, the 3 sat on a frayed blanket on patchy grass, surrounded by laughing children and busy parents. Claire watched cautiously as Anna giggled over Harold's terrible attempt at making duck noises. He was awful at it, and that made her laugh even harder. Claire smiled, then quickly hid it. She wasn't sure what this was, or why this stranger man who clearly belonged to another world had suddenly become her daughter's hero. But as Anna beamed up at him, clutching his hand like she'd known him forever, she realized something heartbreaking. This was the first time in years she'd seen her daughter look truly happy. The breeze was warmer in the park now, soft and playful as it danced through Anna's curls and carried her giggles into the air like tiny bells. Harold Blake, once the coldest man in any boardroom, now sat cross-legged on a worn-out blanket, holding a plastic cup filled with apple juice. Anna had insisted he pretend it was to royal tea for their royal tea party. Claire watched him closely, arms wrapped around her knees. She hadn't said much since they sat down. Her eyes kept drifting between Harold and Anna, filled with quiet questions she wasn't ready to ask. Why had he stayed? What did he want? Do you like being a daddy for a day? Anna asked, offering him a cookie that had clearly been squished in her pocket for too long. Harold accepted it without flinching. It's different, he replied. Different. Good or different weird, he considered. Both. Anna giggled, then leaned her head against his shoulder. It's okay. You're learning. You're not too bad. It was such a simple statement, but it hit Harold harder than anything he'd heard in years. Claire finally spoke. You don't have to keep playing along. You've already been more kind than most. I'm not playing, Harold said quietly, almost to himself. Claire blinked. What? Before he could explain, a phone rang. Loud, sharp, his phone. He hesitated, then answered. Mr. Blake, came the voice of his assistant Leslie. You've missed 2 calls from Tokyo and 1 from Geneva. They're pushing the acquisition deadline. Your 3 p.m. board meeting, cancel it, Harold said flatly. A long pause. Cancel. Sir, that meeting controls the merger. I said cancel it. He hung up without another word. Claire stared at him. You just gave up a major business call to sit in the park with a little girl you don't even know. I don't know her, Harold replied, but somehow she knew me. Claire didn't know what to say to that. Anna yawned. The day was catching up with her. She laid her head in her mother's lap but reached back toward Harold's hand, refusing to let go. And that's when it happened. A woman nearby, seated on a bench with a tablet, lowered her sunglasses and began whispering to the man beside her. They both turned toward Harold. Then another glance. A phone was raised. A picture was snapped. Claire noticed first. Her back stiffened. They're taking pictures, she whispered. Do they know you? I own 3 of the buildings surrounding this park, he said. I'm not invisible. More whispers. More phones. And now a few passers-by slowing as they walked, clearly recognizing him. Claire stood. I think we should go. I don't want Anna exposed to. Harold stood too, instantly protective. Come with me. I'll call a car. No, we'll take the bus. You don't have to do that, he said. Yes, I do. You've been kind, but this is your world, not mine. I can't have my daughter caught in headlines. She's just a child, not a photo opportunity. The warmth in her voice was gone, replaced by a gentle wall of distance. Anna frowned sleepily. Are you going away, Mr. Harold? He crouched again to her level. Only if you want me to. Anna shook her head. No, but Mommy looks scared. Claire bit her lip. It was true. She was scared not of Harold, but of what his world could do to hers. She knew too well how fast good things slipped away when they were never meant for people like her. Thank you for today, Claire said carefully, but it ends here. We should go. Harold didn't argue. He only nodded, but that night, he didn't sleep. He sat in his penthouse, untouched dinner growing cold on the table, and stared at the picture someone had already posted online. It was of him sitting on the picnic blanket, Anna laughing in his lap. The caption read, The Ice King has a heart. Billionaire CEO spotted with unknown child in the park. His phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from investors, emails from PR teams, speculation, gossip. But he didn't care about any of it. He was thinking about how Anna had looked at him. Not like a CEO, not like a stranger, but like he mattered not for what he owned, but for who he was, or could be. The next morning, he did something strange. He went back to the park. Same spot, same time, but there was no Anna, no Claire, just empty grass and the faint echo of yesterday. He returned the next day and the next. On the 4th day, he saw her. Claire. She was walking briskly, holding Anna's hand, trying not to notice him. But Anna noticed. She ran straight into his arms. Daddy Faraday, she cried. Harold smiled, heart suddenly full. I was starting to think you forgot me. Claire approached slowly, more guarded this time. I told you we didn't want attention. I'm not here as a CEO. No press, no photographers. Just me. She studied him. And what is it you want, Harold? I want to help, not out of pity, out of something else. Maybe because I never knew I needed this. Claire's eyes softened just a little, but before she could reply, Anna tugged Harold's hand. Want to come see where the turtles live? He looked at Claire, asking permission. She sighed. Just the turtles. He smiled. But in the shadows of the street, a man watched them from a parked sedan. Dark jacket, hidden camera, press credentials on the dashboard. He raised the lens and zoomed in just as Claire took Harold's hand to help her daughter across the path, and clicked. The story was only just beginning, and none of them knew what storm was coming next. 3 days after the photo of Harold Blake went viral, it appeared on the front page of a major financial news outlet. The Ice King melts. Mysterious child and woman seen with billionaire or scandal. Claire sat at the small table in her tiny apartment, clutching the paper like it was on fire. Anna played quietly on the floor with crayons, completely unaware that her world was on the verge of being torn apart. Her phone had already started buzzing. A few nosy neighbors, someone from the cafe where she'd once worked. Even a voice message from a journalist claiming to know her story. Except they didn't know anything. Harold had kept his word. He hadn't reached out since their last moment in the park. But it didn't matter. The photo had spread like wildfire. And in it, Claire's face was clear as day. She remembered the click of the camera. She remembered feeling watched. And now, her private, carefully hidden world was being exposed. Her eyes welled with tears, but she blinked them away. She had no time to be fragile. She had a daughter to protect. Anna looked up from her drawing. "Mommy, can we go see the turtles again? Maybe Daddy Faraday will be there." Claire smiled weakly. "Not today, sweetheart, not today." That afternoon, Harold sat across from his legal team in a sunlit conference room, but his mind wasn't on contracts or numbers. "Are you even listening, Mr. Blake?" his lawyer asked, pushing a paper toward him. He stared down at the headlines and pictures spread across the table. "I didn't ask for any of this," Harold muttered. "Doesn't matter. Public sees a child, a mystery woman, and the most private man in New York suddenly playing family. They're going to speculate. I need it to stop. You can sue, but that'll only feed the fire." He stood abruptly and left the meeting without another word. That evening he stood outside Claire's apartment building, his coat collar turned up against the wind. He wasn't sure what he was doing. He had her address, he hadn't asked for it, but it had shown up in one of the news briefs from his team. He hated that. He hated that the world had reached for her, like she was just another name in a headline. Hesitated, then finally pressed the buzzer. Nothing. A pause. Then Claire's voice, tired, wary, cautious. "Who is it?" "It's me, Harold." Silence. "I need to talk to you, please." A longer pause. Then the door buzzed. Claire didn't greet him when he stepped inside. She just opened the door to her apartment and walked back to the couch. The room was Modestini kitchen, second-hand furniture, but it was warm, full of small touches that made it home. A painted flower pot, a stack of bedtime books, a crayon drawing on the wall titled "Me and Mr. Harold." That made him stop in his tracks. Claire noticed. She draws a lot. It's how she processes things. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," he said, his voice unusually soft. "I know," she said simply, "but it still did." He sat carefully on the edge of the armchair across from her. "I want to help." "You've already helped," she replied. "You made my daughter laugh again." "She hasn't laughed like that since." She stopped, eyes flickering away. Harold leaned forward. "Since what?" Claire exhaled slowly. Since her real father left. He understood now, the way Anna clung to him, the strange familiarity in her eyes. It wasn't that she saw him as a stranger, it was that she was looking for something she'd lost. Something that left a hole she didn't know how to name. "She doesn't understand abandonment yet," Claire continued. "But she understands distance. I've done my best to protect her from more of it. And now the whole city thinks you're part of some scandal." "Yes." He rubbed his hands together, frustrated. "Let me fix this. Publicly, privately, however you need." Claire stood, crossing her arms. "And what happens when the news moves on? When this isn't exciting anymore?" "I stay," he said quietly. She stared at him. "Why?" He hesitated. "Because I don't want this to be one chapter. I want it to be the beginning." A soft knock at the bedroom door interrupted them. Anna peeked out, her pajama top slightly crooked. "Mr. Harold, are you staying for bedtime story?" Claire turned sharply. "Anna." Harold smiled. "If that's okay with your mom." Anna looked up at her, hopeful. Claire's heart battled with reason. Finally, she nodded. That night, as Harold sat beside Anna, reading a tattered fairy tale book, she reached out and touched his hand. "Will you be daddy for 2 days now?" she whispered sleepily. Harold didn't speak for a moment. Then, quietly, "As long as you'll have me." From the hallway, Claire watched him, hand over her mouth. Her world, once filled with fear, was slowly starting to shift. But just as she began to believe in the possibility of something beautiful again, her phone vibrated with a new email. Subject, urgenture, being investigated for custody violation. Her knees buckled, and everything she was beginning to hope for suddenly felt like it was being torn away. The sound of the email notification still echoed in Claire's ears. Long after she put her phone down, she stood frozen in the hallway, watching Anna cuddle close to Harold on the couch, her tiny fingers curled into his suit sleeve. His voice was calm and steady, reading about a brave little mouse with a wooden sword. And Anna, her daughter, who once trembled at every loud noise, was safe, at peace. But that email had shattered something. She hadn't even opened it yet. Just the subject line alone, urgent her being investigated for custody violation, was enough to shake her to her core. She finally moved, slowly, like her legs didn't quite belong to her. She picked up the phone again with trembling hands and tapped it open. The message was from a law office. Cold official. Too many capital letters. "It has come to our attention that the minor child Anna Marie Taylor may be under unlawful custodial arrangements following the unapproved relocation of said child and potential exposure to unstable environments." Claire dropped to her knees. Unlawful. Unapproved. What were they talking about? She had custody, full legal custody, hadn't she? She pulled open a drawer in a panic, yanked out a folder filled with legal papers. The documents she'd kept since Anna's father left. Abandoned both of them. There it was. The signed agreement. The court stamp. She hadn't done anything wrong, but someone was trying to make it look like she had. The rest of the email made it worse. A hearing was being requested. Within days. And worse still, someone had submitted photos. Photos of Anna, with Harold in the park, in the cafe, in her apartment. The images were all from angles she hadn't noticed. Someone had been following them. She staggered back into the living room, where Harold was gently placing a blanket over Anna, who had fallen asleep. Mid-sentence, Claire? He asked, concerned at her pale expression. She handed him the phone. He read the email, his jaw tightening with every line. This is harassment, he said flatly. It's worse than that, Claire replied, her voice cracking. They're trying to say I'm not fit to care for her. Who would do this? Claire shook her head, already knowing the answer, but not wanting to believe it. There's only one person who'd benefit from this. Her father? Your ex. He never fought for her. He vanished the moment I told him I was keeping the baby. Never paid a cent, never called, but he's got connections. Wealthy parents and pride. If he found out we'd been in the news, he'd want control again, even if just to prove a point. Harold stood, then we fight back. Claire laughed bitterly. You don't understand. I'm no one, no power, no money. I work part-time shifts and live in a studio apartment. He'll walk in with lawyers, charm, and a few forged papers and they'll listen to him before they ever hear me. Harold stepped closer. Then let them listen to me. She looked up at him, startled. I'm not letting him take your daughter, Harold said firmly. Not while I can do something. Her eyes narrowed. Why would you do this? Because I've spent most of my life protecting empires and assets. But this, protecting her, protecting you feels more important than anything I've ever built. She blinked, overwhelmed. But he wasn't finished. I have lawyers who win cases before they even enter the courtroom. I have influence in every major media outlet. And more than that, if I stand by your side, they can't dismiss this as a mother crying wolf. They'll have to listen, because I'll make them. Claire tried to speak, but the words stuck in her throat. Then a knock shattered the silence. A loud, firm knock at the door. Harold instinctively stepped in front of Claire as she reached for the doorknob. Outside stood a man in a tailored gray suit, with an unsettling smile and a manila folder tucked under his arm. Claire Taylor, the man asked smoothly. Yes, she said cautiously. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Gregory Langford. The man continued, handing her a document. He is seeking emergency custody of Anna Marie Taylor, citing unstable living conditions and public exposure. We're required to notify you in person. Court date has been set for this Friday. Good evening. And just like that, he turned and disappeared into the hallway. Claire looked down at the document, her fingers clutching the paper so tightly it wrinkled under her grip. Her worst fear had just taken human form. Harold stepped beside her, his voice quiet but steely. Then we show up in court. Claire looked up at him, eyes wet with fury and fear. And we don't go alone, he added. We go in as a family. She wanted to collapse, wanted to cry and scream and throw the paper back at the world, but she did in single quotes too instead. She held it in her hands and nodded, because no one was going to take Anna from her. Asterisk. The courtroom loomed like a cold monument to power and protocol, with walls that echoed whispers louder than shouts. Claire stood outside its heavy double doors, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted Anna's tiny jacket. The little girl, blissfully unaware of the battle about to unfold, reached up and tugged at her mother's sleeve. Mommy, do I have to talk in there? Claire knelt down, her voice soft but steady. No, sweet pea. You just sit with me, okay? Like we practiced. Nothing scary will happen, I promise. But Claire wasn't sure she could keep that promise. Harold stood behind them, dressed not in his usual navy suit but a charcoal one, darker and more deliberate. His posture was upright, his presence calm. But there was a fire behind his eyes, a silent storm. Ready to protect? Ready, he asked. Claire glanced up at him, surprised by how much strength she could pull from just one look. She nodded. Inside. The courtroom was already humming. On the other side sat Gregory Langford, Claire's ex, and his legal team, polished and confident. Gregory wore a smug grin, like he'd already won. He didn't even look at Anna. Harold noticed. As the judge entered, everyone stood. The proceedings began with introductions, filings, arguments, most of which blurred in Claire's ears, until the judge turned to her. Miss Taylor, there have been allegations of unstable housing, financial insecurity, and inappropriate exposure of the child. Two strangers, what is your response? Claire stood, voice dry in her throat, but she spoke. Your Honor, I've cared for my daughter since the day she was born. I work hard. I live modestly. I've never once endangered her. The man filing these claims hasn't even sent a birthday card. Gregory's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed her to continue. Everything I do is for Anna. I never asked for help, even when I had nothing. But what I never expected was that someone would try to tear her away from me now just because he suddenly remembered she exists. Gasps were audible, including from some of the press sitting quietly in the back row. The case had attracted attention not because of Claire, but because of Harold Blake. Now it was his turn. The judge addressed him. Mr. Blake, what is your involvement in this case? Harold rose with ease, every movement measured. I met Anna and Claire by chance, but chance has nothing to do with what followed. I've spent time with them, seen how Claire loves and raises her daughter, and I've seen a man now trying to erase years of absence by claiming authority he never earned. Gregory's lawyer stood. Objection. Mr. Blake is not family, not a guardian, Harold cut in. calm but powerful. Not yet. The courtroom fell utterly silent. He turned to the judge. Your Honor, I'm not here as a businessman. I'm here as a witness to what this child needs. She needs stability, safety, and love. And I am prepared to offer that not just as a friend of the family, but as someone who intends to become part of it. Claire's heart pounded. She hadn't expected him to say that. Not here. Not now. The judge raised an eyebrow. Are you saying you intend to pursue guardianship? Harold's voice was steady. I'm saying I intend to pursue marriage with Claire and help raise Anna, not out of obligation, but out of love. This may not be the place to declare such things, but if this hearing is about what's best for the child, then honesty must matter. The judge leaned back. The courtroom buzzed. Gregory fidgeted for the first time. Claire was stunned. Words failed her, but Anna tugged her sleeve again and whispered, Does that mean he'll really be my daddy now? Claire bent to her, eyes misted. Maybe, baby, maybe. The judge called a recess. Outside the courtroom, Claire faced Harold. Meant that she asked. I did. I don't have much to offer you, she whispered. You offered me something no one else ever has, he said. A reason to care again. Before she could answer, a woman with a badge approached. Claire? Taylor? Claire turned, wary. I just wanted to let you know. The photos and claims submitted by Mr. Langford were reviewed. One of them was digitally altered. We've launched an investigation into potential evidence tampering. Just thought you should. No. Claire blinked. Harold frowned. Someone faked evidence. The woman nodded. Looks that way. The next hours moved fast. When court resumed, the judge had already been briefed. The credibility of Gregory's claim crumbled like dust. The forged photo, the years of absence, the sudden interest, all backfired spectacularly. By the end of the hearing, not only was Claire's custody upheld, but Gregory had to agree to stay away, unless otherwise permitted by court order. Outside, Claire stepped into the afternoon sun, Anna asleep in her arms, her head on Harold's shoulder. Thank you, she whispered. You don't need to thank me, Harold replied, but I do have one request. Claire tilted her head. He smiled. Dinner, just us. No lawyers, no stress. Just a beginning. Claire laughed softly, the sound catching in her throat. You still want to begin this, after everything? I think I don't want to begin without it, Harold said, and somewhere in her chest, after months of fear and struggle, Claire felt something she hadn't dared to feel in years. Hope. Rain was falling gently that evening, off steady, as though the sky itself was exhaling. Claire stood by the tall window of Harold's townhouse, watching droplets trace lines. Down the glass, she held a mug of tea in her hands, warmth seeping through the ceramic and into her fingers, grounding her in the moment. In the living room behind her, Harold was helping Anna set up a makeshift tent, using bedsheets and couch cushions. Her laughter light, melodic, free-filled the room in waves that softened every corner of Claire's weary heart. Just a few weeks ago, she had been alone, guarding her daughter from the world, shielding her from disappointments too heavy for a child. Now, that same little girl was giggling as Harold tied the final corner of the tent kingdom with dramatic flair. Your Royal Highness, he bowed to Anna. Your throne awaits. Anna squealed and dove into the tent, then popped her head out and called to Claire. Mommy, come inside. It's warm in here. Claire smiled and stepped back from the window. I'll join you both in a minute. Harold met her halfway, brushing a gentle hand across her back as they passed each other. It was a small touch, but one filled with understanding. He could sense she needed just a second. Claire returned to her spot by the window. A memory came rushing in, standing in the rain months ago, clutching Anna to her chest, unsure where to sleep that night. It felt like a different life, like a version of herself she could barely look at now without flinching. But that version of Claire, tired, desperate, unbroken, had survived long enough to find her way here. She turned from the glass and joined them in the living room. Anna had already fallen asleep inside the tent, nestled in pillows, a soft blanket tucked around her. She didn't last long, Harold said softly. She's been through so much. I think peace wears her out. Claire knelt beside her daughter and tucked a loose strand of hair behind Anna's ear. She never would have gotten here without you. Harold shook his head gently. She got here because of you. I just happened to be looking at the right moment. Claire stood, and for a long second, their eyes met. The silence between them was warm, filled with something unnamed but deeply felt. She still talks about the first day you met, Claire said, her voice hushed. Harold smiled. I do too. I'd never been so surprised by anything in my life. She chose you, Claire added, without knowing who you were, or how much you'd come to mean. Harold stepped closer. I meant it, you know, what I said in court. I want to be part of this. Of her, of you, not out of some heroic sense of duty, but because I've found something in both of you that I never found in all the noise of my world. Claire looked down, hesitating. You know what scares me? What? That this could vanish? That something this good doesn't last. Harold reached out and gently took her hand. Then let's build something so strong, it doesn't know how to vanish. His hand stayed in hers. Later that night, after Anna had been tucked into her room, they sat on the small balcony, watching the city lights flicker like stars. I always thought love looked like grand gestures, Claire said, her head resting lightly against Harold's shoulder. Champagne, diamonds, dramatic proposals. And now, he asked, now I think it looks a lot like warm tea, a tiny tent in a living room, and someone who shows up every single day. Harold smiled and kissed the top of her head. Then I'll be there tomorrow, and the day after. She whispered, and every day you'll have me. The stars above glimmered quietly, indifferent to the world below. But for two people and one little girl who once asked a stranger to pretend for just one day, something real had taken root. That what began with a plea in a crowded store had bloomed into something enduring. It was never about pretending. It was always about becoming. And this was just the beginning.